I didn't even. You know what? I didn't. It's been so long since we've done a show. I forgot I even changed the video, Mike. And I forgot to throw in one of our other sponsors
Sponsors,
on there, Moonlighting on there as well. So, um,
dogging it.
anyway, I guess the title is fitting today. How you doing, buddy?
Good. All right. All right.
Yeah, where you at?
In the office, grinding away, getting magazines out.
I've been trying to get you on the show, and you know what? Since we've become friends, I forgot to tell you because, like, Big Brother's always listening on here, right? And so now everything that comes up on my feed, not everything, but like a lot of what comes up on my feed is like bowling stuff all of a sudden, and it's got to be from being friends with you, man. So
Yeah, well, it's always good to like compare yourselves. See what other sports are doing that are kind of in that same category that you are. And
yeah,
bowling certainly in that same category as pool. And so yeah, they've done some pretty cool stuff lately.
I keep an eye on stuff like that, like other niche sports, Mike, and
Yeah.
then inevitably, what ends up happening is I end up feeling like really depressed about the state of pool when I start seeing stuff like that. So it never fails that eventually I end up getting there at some point throughout, like following up on these things. There's my
Yeah,
man
right.
Collins not working in the chat. Let us know if you guys can hear us and see us. All right, I'm live from San Diego. I've been here for the last week or so. Was out in Sacramento, then Lake Tahoe for a little bit, getting some little like R&R, and then I head back home for the girls starting on Saturday. And so girls are getting big, Mike. I'm getting old. They're starting school again, and I tell you what, if there's a reason to celebrate, it's them kids getting back to school, buddy, because summer
Yeah,
was
right.
brutal.
Thanks for a long summer. Thanks for a
Yeah,
long
yeah, yeah.
summer. Yeah, yeah. Good.
We got a lot of stuff to jump into, though, Mike. A lot of stuff to catch up on. Matt Poland says audio visual is good. Neil Soloway says good to see you guys back. Well, let us know in the chat uh, as you guys follow along what you guys are enjoying in the pool world. There's a lot going on, Mike. The Florida Open just finished. Battle the Bulls going on. The World
Yeah.
Games, U.S. Open's coming up. There's just so much stuff coming up, Mike. And I want to just start with the Florida Open that just finished. And I want to just ask you right off the bat, Mike, is now I know there's like 18 different rankings in the sport, which speaking of putting me on tilt, that's one
Yeah.
way to do it, right? You got Fargo Ray. You used to have Pro Beard Series rankings. Then you had WPA rankings. Then
Right.
you got Matchroom rankings. And then within the Matchroom rankings, you have a 12-month and then a 2 year, although I'm
Right.
not sure what a 2 year does anymore at this point since there are no more
A
invitationals, it seems
two-year
like.
establishes 2 year, I think, establishes your ranking for things like the WNT top 100 for the World Championship. They're not
Okay.
picking it year to date, right? They're picking it
Yeah.
over a longer period to establish that. Theoretically, it would likely be used for things like your PLP, your World Cup of Pool, your World Pool
Well,
Masters,
yeah.
things like that used to be regulars.
Yeah. Used to is the operative phrase there in that statement. But like on that note of like where everybody ranks again, I want to ask you, Mike, is Yap the best player in the world right now?
Uh, I I'd be hard pressed to say that. I think he's living up to his potential now. What we always thought
Yeah.
he was going to do, which is a contender at every event, doesn't surprise you when you see him up there anymore. He certainly won enough events in the past year to be in that conversation of the top 5 players. But I don't know that many people, would say, yeah, he's better than Federer, he's better than Josh.
Well, I
Sure.
say that like obviously I mean it in terms of like tournament rotation play, right? Because I'm not going to include things like One Pocket, obviously, which you never see him in, or Banks, or any of those like American games, 8 ball, things like that. But just in terms of like rotation tournament play, tournament rotation players, I should say, because I started thinking about and really it was the Hall of Fame that got me interested in this because I don't know how the hell I got involved in the media email of being able to vote for Hall of Famers, but um, in that
Yes,
I
good
started thinking,
shots.
yeah, no kid, I started looking at Carlos' accomplishments, right, and then I started thinking about, man, that guy's been so consistent over the last 10 years, but then I think about the last like 3 or 4 years, and I would think, okay, well, that's been the filler era. Oh, wait a minute, no, that's been the Federer era. And then I think about things that Yap has done, and then it's like, okay, he's owned the International Open over the last few years, which has been a tough tournament in and of itself, right?
Yeah.
Then you think about the U.S. Open that Carlo won. Yap was in that final as well, Mike. You know, and
Yeah.
that was 4 years ago, 5 years ago, something like
And
that.
the semifinal that he was in against Cole. Yeah,
Right.
he's been up there. You know, there have been, for me, there were always too many tournaments where he was out way too early.
Okay.
You know, even this year with the World Pool Championship, not one of his better showings. Now it can happen to anybody anytime, but he's been really, in the past couple of years, yeah, he's right there with everybody. I mean, you left out Sanchez Ruiz from a couple of years ago. That was a run that few people have seen in a long time, right?
We've never seen it, Mike. Not few people. We've never seen it before. What Fran has done, right?
Yeah, three World Championship finals in the same 12 months. That's pretty strong. So, but yeah, Yap right now is he always kind of seemed to lack that confidence.
Yeah.
And I teased him. I sent him a note after Florida and said, hopefully you're feeling a little more confident these days, because he always talks about how lucky he got. And again, he responded right away. He said, yeah, I got really lucky. I've had some really lucky breaks and things like that. And I said, you just got to start focusing on that confidence, because he knows now that he can battle anybody all the way through the end. He can come back on people. He's just getting a little bit of that. So, and he's still young. I mean, he was this child prodigy, and it took him a while to kind of fulfill that. But
well, he was, but then he also had this gap where I think he came on the scene, if I remember right, Mike, and then he had to serve in the military for Singapore, if I remember, where he was gone for like 2-3 years. And this is after like we have first seen him,
right.
And then he comes back, and he's always been like this, like bigger individual, but like it seems like and I know you talk about his confidence not being as much of a focal point, but like he seems to have this, like he knows he's an alpha now. He knows he's a big dog in a room, and I think everybody in the circuit now knows that as well, because that dude is just as steady as can be. And like you mentioned a second ago, like no matter where he's at in a match, I never really feel that he's out of it. Like it doesn't matter if he's down 5-0. It's like the dude, I'm not like other guys I know that can check out. And I mean like big guys, Mike. I mean like big names, guys with a big shadow and a big resume who can check out if they're stuck 4 or 5 games, especially depending on the format. Where Yap, it's like you can never tell where he's at. Like you look at him, you're never going to know at what, if he's 5-1 up or 5-1 down.
Yeah, well, I've noticed one of the things I have noticed about him in the past year is he used to miss or play a bad shot or things like that, and he would look like a guy who's lost confidence. Right?
Yeah.
Now
Yeah,
he misses a shot, and he goes back to his chair, and he actually looks a little pissed off.
Yeah.
I've noticed that. I noticed that a lot in Florida when things would go right. He'd go back, he'd sit down, he looked like he was mad, like he's ready to get back in there and get back after it. And that's visually one of the differences that I've really noticed the last couple of times I watched him go deep in the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, optics is so big, and the mental aspect, especially when it comes to pro players, is so weighted, right? And so all these like puzzle pieces that fit together, when you start thinking about someone's overall complexion, is how you really go and measure it, I feel like. And some guys are just wired differently. And I agree with you. Like he's been at times in his career where it seemed like he was about to get swallowed up in the wave, where now it feels like, okay, he's just going to put the seatbelt back on and just ride it out until he gets back out there. And when he does, it's like he just does his business, Mike, and he does everything that he's really good at, which is running out balls, which is making great decisions, which is executing great saves. And you don't think about him like you start categorizing top players. You think about, okay, well, how is his tournament play? How is his pocketing? How is his safety play? His jumping ability? Well, we have guys who like we would pick if we had one shot to take, right? We're picking filler, right? As far as getting like a one tough shot, a jump shot, we're picking Federer. And we think about accomplishments in terms of players and tournament play, but then like Yap doesn't stand out as being number one on every one of those things, or maybe any of those things, but like he's still always there, like at the end of events, Mike. Like his
Yeah.
overall game is so well put together and so well balanced. He's got a very strong finesse break shot as well, which serves him well, especially playing rotation. And it just seems like no matter the moment, the kid just stands up. The Reyes Cup, which I thought, okay, like he made it in. It kind of seemed like a cool story, but
Right,
like
right, right.
we would never pick Singapore as an elite country to go and represent, right? But like Yap's kind of saying, hey, listen, I deserve respect too, and oh, by the way, I'm going to go and claim an MVP in order to gain more respect. I'm going to get U.S. Open semifinals and finals appearances. I'm going to go and get UK Open. I'm going to go and get now the Florida Open, and so like it's kind of cool to see him step into his own light, and I'm like I don't think of him as necessarily obviously he doesn't have that world championship under his belt just yet, or is he a junior world champion, Mike? I can't recall.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's like I would think of him in the same breath as like a Federer. I would think of him in the same breath as a Carlo. I would think of him in the same breath as some of these top guys,
These days, yeah,
because
for sure.
because he's and reflecting back on that U.S. Open finals with Carlo, it's like, man, consistency is so key, right? Like Fran had that breakout year. Me and you went back and forth during that time. Like, oh, is that enough for the Hall of Fame? Blah blah blah. And I'll still debate it that it is. But it's like Fran's kind of disappeared over the last 12 months. Yap's still around.
Well,
Like
we had that discussion.
by Fran standard, I mean.
Well, we had that discussion when Fran went through that thing.
Yeah.
He's automatically now in the Hall of Fame. Like, well, it's not that easy. Hall of Fame is a career, so it's you got to keep it going. Now, Fran is obviously been consistent enough, maybe not to win, but to be in that top 8
Yes.
rankings,
100%.
top 5 in the rankings for the past couple of years, because he still finishes high. But you can have these hot streaks and then not win the tournament for a long time. It's we'll see how he goes from here, whether he just gets better and better,
Yeah.
or whether he hits one of those 1 year dry spells, year and a half, 2 year dry spells. But he's young, he's just solid as can be, and he's got if his confidence up, he's got such a great temperament. Anyways, he's always such an easy guy to talk to, and
Oh yeah.
himself up, afterwards once a match is over too much. So, he's.
And I love that about him, Mike. I mean, I can recall, we got the U.S. Open coming up here next week, and I can recall the U.S. Open from 2 years ago, or I think it was 2 years ago. And I go outside. It was Ko Ping Chung and Yap in a semifinal, and I was with SVB, and I said, let's go do some stuff at the How booth, and do some content and stuff. And of course, I'm keeping an eye on my phone as far as the score. And before you knew it, it was 9-0, right? And I remember walking back out, and it was Sharik and Yap and To Han Lin, or whatever the dude's name is, the older gentleman who the sensei that walks around with him. And I walk up there, and I was like, "What happened? How?" And he's like, "What are you gonna do?" And I was like, "Well, how many balls did you make?" And I was just joking around with him, and he says, "Well, I made 9 before the match started, because he got a practice rack, and but he was just all smiles and such a good attitude, and it's easy to root for guys like that.
Yeah.
It's even better when they wear the losses so easily, but then they're still humble in accomplishments. Like I don't even know if Yap got on the table during that that victory in the final.
He did that at the UK Open. He said that might have been not his best move. No,
Is that what he said?
In Florida, he just looked like he was. It was kind of more exhaustion than I don't have enough strength to go climbing up on a table. Yeah. It wasn't a jump up and down type of moment. It was a grind.
SVB was in the finals alongside with him, Mike. How many more finals do you think this guy has in the next 2 years?
Many as he wants. I mean, he can still get through any event, any opponent. There's no opponent that's too big for him. So he can win every match if he's got his game. His semifinal match against Chang was amazing.
Yep.
His comeback, he fought through the final. When he got to 9-9, thought it's anybody's ball game. Then he missed that one up the rail, and it was pretty much lights out after that. Then he scratched. So a couple bad plays there, but he still has it. He's still as dangerous as anybody in any of those matches.
Yeah, I think the one thing with Shane that's kind of been his pillar within his game over the course of his career has been that break. And
Right.
on the flip side of that, part of his love-hate relationship with Nine Ball, he'll never say it publicly, but that disdain for this new era of Nine Ball is,
Right.
he hasn't figured out that riddle yet, not for any kind of consistent amount of time.
Right.
And we know how important that shot is, especially in modern day rotation play. But if he does find it, which he did to some extent at the Florida Open, look out, because you can if Shane can have bits of hope in that break to hold on to, along with everything else that's in here and in here, all bets are off when it comes to Shane, and you never know how much more remotivated and re-inspired that guy can get at this point of his career, Mike.
Yeah, right. No, he like I said, he's never out. He's never anything worse than even money to win a match against anybody. So he goes into that knowing that he can, um, he can still win. There's no doubt about it to me.
It gets me really pumped up, and I kind of, as the final was going on, I'm hearing Uncle Mike in the back of my head say, you know what, it's okay if Shane doesn't win, because I want him to go on to win the 6th US Open. So you can't win the Florida Open right before, right? Because that's just ridiculous. And nobody ever wins back to back, although Yap did from the UK to the Florida. But it's it gets me more all eyes on Atlantic City for next week, because I want to see how Shane does. I want to see if Yap can follow up. I want to see if Ko Ping Chung's going to be there, how's he going to go and play. I want to see Federer, of course, and if he can go and repeat. So many storylines to look at in terms of next week, Mike. But let me ask you this on
for the coast there. I know that the draw's out. Did you know
not in there?
Was on there?
I don't know. Only as I'm saying it did I realize the same thing in my head. But no, maybe the chat can let us know if he's even in the draw. I would be surprised if he's not. There's got to be a lot going on in China if he's not. But given the prize money and the value of this,
yeah,
and where he stands on the,
I would have almost thought that we'd have seen him Battle of the Bulls type thing, get over here a little bit early, hit some balls, get things like that. But I don't know. I didn't take a close look at the draw side before they showed up.
I would hope so. I would hope so. And he's one of these guys that over the course of the last 5 years, so you talk about consistency, you're going to have right there in that conversation, Mike, especially on WNT tournaments. And I'd argue between the two brothers, he's probably playing better than Big Brother, which is crazy. But Florida Open, Mike, in general, what was your thoughts on it? There's a lot of comments from Matt and Raymond in the chat as far as
it seemed
in the audience.
It seemed like the buzz there was great. The crowd there was great. I was not personally a fan of the arena setup. I thought that they were going to. I kept waiting for it to change at the end for those last couple of matches, semifinal, final, into a regular arena, single table arena, and it really didn't. So it was not visually one of the better production events that I've seen them do. Who knows why? I don't know, but the crowd seemed to be really into it, and the vibe that everybody was talking about seemed to be really positive. It was great to have an event in Florida, so I'm sure it's something they could build on. So yeah, overall the event was great. It was cool to see, a lot of those young guys. We see it every tournament. You get down to the final 8, final 4. There's a couple guys in there I've been waiting for this guy to show up. It was great to see Mickey back in the final 4.
Yep.
Emil Gang, Moritz, guys like that making strong runs. Max Lechner, it was good to see some of those names back, back in there and into that final eight.
Yeah, no, there was, and there was guys who I was looking at in terms of like, can they have consistency in this tournament, or are these guys who are in prime position after 7 months? Where are they gonna like? How are they gonna do during this stretch? And the guys like Mickey come to mind. The guys like Jonas come to mind. Because these
Yeah.
are guys who are going to have to earn their way onto that team if you want to make the European team. And then you have other guys who, of course, are going to be in more comfortable spots, maybe not as much fire under their asses or whatever. But like in terms of the event itself, it looked like there was no shortage of storylines, but at the same time,
Right.
like, yeah. But then at the same time, I do agree with you in terms of like the layout, because it kind of reminded me of like, I don't even know. It kind of reminded me of like PLP almost. You know what I mean? Where like at Jason's room, where it was like they just had banners around the table, and yeah, it was cool. But then it was like that was it. And
Yeah,
I think
visually it wasn't up to Matchroom normal standards, but you give them a mulligan every once in a while or
well,
whatever.
it's the first event too, and as far as an open event there as well. And I like the Crib Royale. I mean, I was
They've
there.
certainly been in the arena before. I mean, they built Moscone at that same place, so they knew what they were dealing with. Yeah, I'm not sure what the issue was, but it just, it still again looked like a great event. There were great storylines. The John Morris storyline was great. The Jesus Atencio storyline was great. There was a lot of cool stuff in there.
Jesus is always a player who I've been high on over the last few years,
Yeah,
Mike, and then
just
he
want to see him out
disappeared.
there
And
more often, right?
yeah, he's when you said that statement earlier, that was a guy who like I immediately think of, and um, I just remember thinking maybe 3 years ago saying this kid's got world championship
Yeah,
speed. In my opinion, I think he's got a great all around game, Mike. I think his break is severely underrated. Whether it's 10 ball in 9 ball, I really haven't seen it a whole lot, so I can't really say it. But when it comes to like his run out game, I mean, it's there with anyone. I love
yeah.
his delivery. He's super smooth. Jumping, I think he's second behind Federer. So it's like if he can have that break, and I feel like his temperament is kind of like Chua-esque in the sense, but like Chua when Chua was still in awe of the guys. You know what I mean? Like Chua
Yeah,
whenever he was still looking up to these
sure.
guys. And I
Before he
feel like,
turned the corner, yeah, yeah,
yeah. And I kind of think of Jesus the same way, whereas he just doesn't get out there enough to go out there and play, or for whatever reason, whether it's financial or life or whatever, you know what I mean? And so, um, but he's certainly a kid that I love seeing in events like this, because it's like, look, if you have an event like the Florida Open where you kind of take command of the stage, right? That can parlay you into so many more opportunities with these like content hungry promoters who want to just find the next star. And there's opportunity for stars to be showcased, Mike, because there's a lot of lack of personality in these top 100 players, where if you have a guy with a little bit of flavor and an exciting game, he's not afraid to go 2 rails with the cue ball, and he's got a solid fan base behind him. It's like I want to see more of this kid, and so he's a guy for sure I'm going to be keeping an eye on for next week's U.S. Open, because I'd love to see him kind of go almost Vitali on us, right? Like let me see
yeah.
him get into let me see him get into a semifinal of the U.S. Open, and see what happens to the guy, So, and I think he's got that kind of ceiling. I don't know if he's got finals appearance type ceiling yet, but you'd imagine like top 8 is certainly well within that reach for a kid like him. So,
Yeah, you think so?
what were some other things you were taking a look at, Mike, for the Florida Open and the U.S. Open for next week?
Well, just like looking at the Florida Open as the lead into the U.S. Open, I did take a quick peek, and the Koch brothers are all into U.S. Open, so we will
Okay.
see them out there. U.S. Open is going to be, just a killer field, bigger money this year, bigger production this year, I'm sure. So I'm really looking forward to getting out there for that. The Florida Open was a great lead-in into this. There's a couple of regional tournaments on the front and back end of it. It made for it's been a pretty good 3-4 weeks already leading into the
Yeah.
U.S. Open. So it's cool to see that all that kind of action come to the U.S. over this short span of time. And we talked about it before, something you'd love to see in the future as a more organized effort. Moving the tour continent to continent with these little runs of events. So yeah, next week's going to be great. Uh, you know,
And I think you need these type of events to piggyback for a number of different reasons, Mike. You got to be able to pad the bank account a little bit, right? So like
right?
going from a 4-inch matchroom, tournament to, let's say, a 4.5 standard, it gives guys more opportunity who maybe their game's not as sharp, you know what I mean, or as developed on the matchroom stage versus the pool room type stage, and I would like to say it gives Americans more of an advantage, but reality is there was still nobody around, in the final whatever it was 16 of the
Yeah.
of the Florida Open, which I mean I don't even know where to go with that, Mike, because it's such.
Well, it actually kind of looked a little bit promising leading up to that, because you had Sky was still in it to 32 or so. You had who was the Florida the Florida kid. Um,
American? Oh, Anthony Maglino. Was it?
yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Maglino plays good. He plays really good in Florida.
so
In Florida, he plays good.
there were a couple surprises there. Chris Reinhold, into that 64 and 32, but then the wheels came off after that. So we'll see what happens. They'll all be in Atlantic City, so we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, no, Maglino is always a guy who he's a trap for a lot of guys. He beat Federer in the one pocket of Derby. I think it was this past year. And he's got a great game. I love his one pocket game as well. He's boring to watch, but like his game is completely solid. And I like seeing these guys where maybe it's a Latin American player or a regional American player like a Maglino who can have a deep run in these bigger type of events. I just want to see consistency, Mike. And for the Americans, outside of like the usual suspects, right? And it's been SVB only until Federer became American.
Donnie Mills had a good Florida Open. There's some. It was cool to see some of those names pop in there a little bit deeper than you've seen them before.
Yeah,
that was all good. Yeah.
I think about like things I can hope for in terms of Mosconi Cup, and that's always going to be that measuring stick, right? Like, how are they going to do under like a bigger name or a bigger match? And there's just nobody to me that goes out there and just says like, I'm ready for the spotlight now. And that's why I would say for the last couple of months, I'd probably throw more opportunity for some juniors just to kind of see where they're at, because fuck it, you got nothing else to lose, right? You already get your ass whooped 9-3 or 11-3, whatever it is, every year, so you might as well get some of these kids some seasoning and see what they're made of, and see if their ceiling is higher than some of these Americans who have kind of, I don't want to say bottomed out, but just like not lived up to the potential that maybe they think they are on the world stage.
Yeah, maybe the ceiling is where it is right now. It's not any higher.
So. Yeah, and I want something. Look, you know me, Mike. I'm not the homer, but I want something to make that event more competitive on paper versus just appreciating it from a true like pool nut sports rivalry standpoint. You know what I mean? Because it already has that fandom that we need in sports. We just got to have it be more competitive too, and then we'll see what happens. And then see if it can really blow up. So any thoughts on the issue of wax? Oh yeah, on
all right, let's talk about how many Filipinos are going to be in the U.S. Open. I think there's going to be like 14, 13 Filipino players in the U.S. Open, including Bathett, right? Everybody's talking about his first appearance over here. We'll see what comes up there. There was a lot of
he was the guy who beat Federer during, and I never heard of him up until that point when he beat Federer, when Federer goes to the Philippines and plays him 10 ball like a couple years ago, whatever it was. And yeah, I am. Look, when Raga first came over, I was really excited to see him, but that learning curve is so steep for a lot of these guys where like they're just not going to transition to being able to have, at least like up until this point, there's never been anyone that I could think of, at least in modern pool, where like they're coming right over from across the water and, terrorizing unless they like start staying in that regional type thing to kind of get their wheels greased, but not just coming over and playing a major. Does that
Hop
make
into a
sense, Mike?
tournament, play a major, and because that's the toughest thing about these tournaments is, yeah, you can beat Federer, you can beat him in a long race, you can beat him here, you can beat him here, but you're going to be able to string 5, 6, 7 matches like that together against really good players. You got to have it, every match. So that's what I like about the tournament proving ground.
Yeah.
It's you gotta turn around and do it again tomorrow or later today, and against somebody who's just as big, just as good, and just as hungry as you. So, that difference in opponents all the time just makes it
Oh
so
yeah,
much.
because I mean, let's just be real. Shane didn't have the toughest ride to get to the Florida Open final, so like having things work out for you is going to be key. And you could think
Yeah,
of it like, oh, you got to get lucky in that regard too, just like you have to get lucky on the table. But like, there's a lot of traps these days, and so and not only that, but I was
the
talking to
reason that Shane had a softer role and some of these other guys didn't have those roles because a lot of people fell into traps in the earlier rounds.
yeah,
Right?
exactly.
That's what opens the door for you. It's not that you got you just had a road that was filled with nothing but 13s playing 15s and 20s playing 22s. You got some help along the way. So you
I
know
remember talking with Tyler recently, Steyer, and we were talking about how like a tournament bracket can kind of open up, and he made a really great point, which I don't mind sharing. And it was, like yeah, it's good when the bracket opens up in your favor. He's like, but that almost puts more pressure on you because then you have to deliver,
right.
because then it's like then there's expectations where maybe they weren't, like maybe you had an easier out before because it's like, oh, well, you're playing insert top guy. Whereas if things open up in your favor now, it's like, oh shit, well now it's your time. You better go after and get the better of it.
Yeah,
Um,
it can
and
put more pressure on you, and playing a better player can take the pressure off you and
mhm.
make you focus more. I mean, Tyler's talked to me about that too, about when he beat Josh. Time says, you get against a guy like that, you have to play perfect, so you're so laser focused for the entire match, and then it becomes really, if you win that match, it becomes really tough to have that same kind of focus the next match because it's got to take a lot out of you, right? So, it's just. Um, it's the up and down. There's the back and forth of how to get through a whole tournament.
For sure. And when you mention that, like the first thing that comes to mind is Mora, because I saw that celebration. I forgot who he was playing against. Maybe it was Jesus or where Jesus I feel like was a storyline up until that point. But
Who's
then
that?
it's like Mora,
Yeah.
where
Oh, John.
where
Yeah,
yeah,
when John beat Jesus. Yeah.
yeah, and you would have thought the guy won the whole thing. You know what I mean by that reaction. But then it's like, how do you, like, yeah, you come off a big win, right? But then how do you compartmentalize and then still have that same level of intensity and and then execution on top of that, more importantly, right, to go out there and finish the event, right? You already got through what was the story, what was the guy with momentum, what was the Cinderella or whatever you want to go and peg the guy as, and so but you have to follow through. And this is why, like, when I saw the bracket open up, I forgot who I was. Oh, it was Oscar. So me and Oscar were sweating it from Tahoe, right? And I said, let's do it last longer, right? And he snap calls. He says Shane, and I was like, okay, well, of course it's fucking Shane. And then I look at his draw, and I'm like, okay, good, yeah, way to go out on a limb, buddy. And then I picked the app, and I could have the same argument, right, like the draw and everything else. But then it's like those guys, when those guys have that roadmap, so to speak, in terms of a bracket, more often than not, they're gonna get there, especially in majors, because majors is a big difference for these bigger boys because they know what the fuck they have to do in order to get through that round. They know how to prepare. Shane's a nut. Shane will eat the same meal before his match. Like all these things are like he's very regimented. You know what I mean, Mike? And what it takes to kind of be competing on Sundays and what's it going to take. And so, but like for these other guys, these unproven names, right? Like a Lechner, who we've been high on before, but then it's like, can you get out of that final eight? Can you get into a semifinal or final of a major tournament? It's like something is there with the bigger names and something isn't with these smaller names until they actually, you know, finish the job, Mike, so to speak.
Right. Right.
You know. But the other thing, like in terms of Yap, that I really appreciated on that note of the wax and everything else, was to kind of see him respond after all that drama from the week before, or during that World Championship, and then still be able to finish off an event, which is tough to do in and of itself. But then to finish off an event in the U.S. against Shane, in an inaugural event, like it was pretty sweet what that guy was able to go and put together, Mike.
Yeah, well, I don't think that, I think that we talked about it a lot more than those guys did after, as far as the fallout goes. Um, so, there was all this thing about how, um, yeah, was going to, face blowback from the Asian players because he called out, you know, guys from Team Asia, things like that. Um, I didn't look like that affected anybody, period.
Well, I think like what was great for at least from the promoter standpoint is that pool became the storyline, and there were so many things to kind of look for within that tournament, which were awesome, right? Like you think about Maglino and Mora and Jesus, and then the usual suspects. Okay, Shane's gonna have a good run, and Yap and blah blah blah. But like, look, while I expected there not to be any like talk publicly about it from these players, I feel like in the locker room, there's still very much going back and forth and chirping and whispers, and you know what I mean. Everyone having their own individual conversations when it comes to this. And I heard that players were communicated to get with referees and blah blah blah, like if they suspect
Right.
anything and this and that. But as much as I'm glad it wasn't a story during the Florida Open, I'm still a little. I want to say annoyed, but then I want to say I'm not surprised, like hearing Matchum's lack of response during all this, Mike. And just
Well,
and just
yeah, their response to the players was posted by a few people, right? So,
yeah.
as far as and the WPA came out with something, but didn't, they haven't fine tuned their, what constitutes, you know uh, any kind of infraction of rules. So, I think that those two entities are still kind of feeling their way through it, but it's a talking point, for now, and hopefully it's no more than that, going forward. I'd be interested to see at the U.S. Open whether you can tell that if there's any animosity between players that, you know that didn't look like it showed much in Florida.
No, and I mean, like, I think, look, some guys just roll together versus others. Like the Filipinos are always going to roll together for the most part. The Americans, yeah, as well, although some can kind of be lone rangers compared to others. The Europeans, for sure, are buddy buddy. You'll see the Austrians deep, and you'll see some other group of like Grabe and Kazakis and Mario and all these guys kind of roll together. So like there's clicks for sure, and I think like within that there'll still be those conversations, and you'll kind of see these from, like, I saw this thing with Moritz and Pius, and I didn't get to watch the whole thing, but like they were kind of touching base on the wax issue, and it's easy for them because they're like, they're talking about name guys, and but like these guys who have put themselves a part of the conversation are kind of, and smartly so, stepping back and just letting things kind of settle down. And the good thing for Yap is that winning kind of forgives all. Maybe not to the Filipino fans, but like for every other fan within the sport, winning kind of cures everything, Mike. And
Oh, it does. I
um,
saw a lot of people online with all of a sudden they were playing the an Asian beat the American card.
yeah, yeah,
About the same Asian that 2 weeks ago they were ready to ride out of town on a rail because he said something against a Filipino player. So,
yeah.
um, yeah, it's the tune can change really quickly.
There was some other things going on in the pool world, Mike. The World Games
Real games,
just
yeah.
just concluded once every 4 years. Filler comes in with the bronze, Gerson with the silver, and Zelnacki with the gold. Savannah Easton was out there, April Larson, Corey Deuel, amongst others. Some real talent out there, Mike, in all divisions of Q Sports. What were your thoughts on that event?
It's a cool event. It's a stepping stone event. It's a great event because you go into it, strictly on a national pride level. There's no prize money. They're not the deepest fields in the world.
Yeah.
They have some really good players, top player like Josh, people like that. But it's still it's still a showcase kind of event from a visibility standpoint and the national pride thing. It's still a big deal and something that pool needs to be involved in going forward to try to help grow the sport internationally. So glad to see that it looked like it was a nice job as opposed to Birmingham. The billiard portion out there looked pretty legit and went it looked like it went really well. I'm happy for Oliver. Great kid.
Yeah.
Happy for Gerson. It was you saw that everybody's posted the photo of him breaking down after beating Josh. Great stuff. The women, the Asians dominated like they tend to do when women's events are held in Asia.
Shocking.
Uh,
Shocking,
you know,
Mike.
yeah, Han Yu
Yeah.
winning, beating Cheska, Shasha Lu finishing.
By the way, Hanyu and Lu Shashar were like the who's who of women pool for the better part of 15 years,
Yeah,
as
yeah,
far as like championships, but they just don't get to come over here as often, Mike.
right. So yeah, it looked like it was a terrific event. The free stream was nice. It was a big step forward to me for the WPA, for the
Yep.
WCBS, and help get a decent event over there. The organizers in China obviously did a great job. So haven't talked to the players at all about their experience out there. How tight they were with other athletes from other countries, with other athletes from their own country who are in different sports. That's the World Games that I've been to, 2 World Games, and that's the thing that they come out of there remembering most is being in a multi-sport international games like that, and feeling like you're a real athlete among athletes, and representing your country and all that stuff. So it's an important part for the future of the sport. I really think it is because it helps grow the sport in different countries. So it helps other countries want to get involved in the sport and support people in their own country trying to get medals in a particular sport. So it looked like it went well. I'm happy for them. Again, it's not something that you say was the greatest tournament in the history of the world, but that wasn't the purpose of it.
No, and everything you're saying, I couldn't agree more, especially in terms of like the effort and the upgrade from Birmingham until like to China. For whatever reason, like it was severely upgraded, which was great. Especially from being able to view and sweat and like pulling at patriotic strings is is so great when it comes to sports. And you think about like hockey comes to mind and how last year's I even forgot what it was called, but it was like the country's event they had was really good, like even in terms of ratings. And I'm even there sweating it, and it's not even like as a homer, but just like as a sports fan in general. You know what I mean? I love seeing shit like that. And think about the American college kids versus the Russians all those years ago, and it's like if you can incorporate some aspect of that, there's something there, and that's part of the reason why I love the World Cup of pool. You know, and part of the reason why I love being a fan of Filipino players is because of the pride that they take in representing their country, and not the pride that they take into collecting a $20,000 paycheck, once a year at the end of the year. Like it means something to them to wear that flag on, whether on their shoulder or on their back or whatever, and to get the opportunity to go and play and represent your country means a lot. To kind of get more respect on a world stage, I think is great as well. You know what I mean? Being in the likes of some of these other sports and all these different athletes, which is great.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, no, I enjoyed it, Mike, a lot compared to the last few years, or at least the last couple of World Games that I can recall. And on the note of WPA, like events like this do help out with some of these players go and get funding um, through their areas, right? And so and especially look, we can talk about how great pool is, and it is. Pool's completely on the rise. There's more money in the game than ever, but players are getting squeezed every which way they can turn. From flights to hotels to entry fees to, having this 12-month calendar is brutal. And you're seeing that in some of the selection that these guys are taking, which um, puts more like spotlight on the financial aspect of it. And you can have all these like 6-figure things you want to go and highlight in terms of ranking points and shit like that. But let's I want to see what their travel expenses were like during that 2-year period as well, to see what they're actually going and making. And I don't think anybody's going to want to have that shit be public. Anybody,
All right.
So to go and have these events where, and this is where like it puts more of an emphasis on being able to coordinate, whether it's with promoters or WPA and Matchroom or whatever, these federations, in order to give these players more support to be able to play a little bit more free. You know, like, look, Gerson was a great story, and I talked about this the other day when I posted on Windows Open about like how awesome it is to see Latin American guys go and get opportunity. But
Yeah.
like when you take advantage of opportunity, that's when something special can happen, Mike. Whether from a fan base standpoint or from just appreciating someone, even if you're not Peruvian or whatever, like you were sweating that match and wanting to see the conclusion of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, and there's so many things like that within our sport that don't get talked about or don't even have a chance to like really blossom because guys are struggling. Guys and girls are struggling. So it's cool kind of seeing this every 4 years. I'd love to see more of it. I'd love to see some Americans kind of take more pride in it, and I know a lot of them are really bottom line based, and I'm not upset at them for thinking about their
Yeah.
finances, but it's cool kind of seeing like the Savannah Eastons take pride in representing USA. It's cool to see Gerson take pride in representing this country, representing Latin players, and then going out there and beating a guy like Filler, like that meant something to him,
Yeah.
and especially coming off the world championships.
It'd be interesting to see, talk to him about, what kind of impact something like that has in Peru, in Latin America, South America. Does it, nationally, does it move the needle at all? Does it get anybody else's eyes open down there to let's try to funnel some money into supporting these efforts, because this is a sport where we can get some medals and get some national notoriety, and it's not going to have it's not going to have any huge impact overnight, but it just
No,
interesting be interesting to know whether the ripples reached from China to Peru, um, and
I hope
and
so.
and to
I
see,
do.
did it help him individually, things like that. So yeah, be interesting to talk to him. I don't know. I didn't even notice whether he was going to be in Atlantic City or not.
He should be. He usually is playing all the big majors here in the U.S. And um, yeah, no, I agree with you, Mike. And it's hard to kind of like really gauge it because we're like in this vacuum fast food world, right? And I can recall Tevez being in a World 10 Ball Championship, and then 2 years later, like he's not even playing pool on a global stage anymore, And it's kind of like it's kind of brutal, but that's the way of the world these days, For whatever reason, whether it's politics or finances, support, whatever. You know what I mean? And a lot of times, especially players in these low income countries, they're all just being preyed upon by, whether it's potential stake horses or whatever, to like just pimp them out and go play these money games here or there, or whatever, by these guys who otherwise wouldn't like have any kind of like position in the sport in general, but because there's no money in pool, there's such an opportunity for that aspect to, and for the players, like, what are you going to do, right? You kind of have to go down that road because how
Yeah,
else are you going to make any money?
right.
It's such a tough spot to go and be in. But on the note of the World Games, Mike, before we transition, I want to just touch base on Filler for a minute, because we've seen Filler kind of disappear in a couple of events where like we weren't expecting him to disappear, not by his standard anyway.
Yeah, no,
And
right.
the World Games was really telling. Like, I know Gerson has a lot of heart, and I'm not trying to discredit or take away anything that he did in that match with Filler. But in regards to Filler, like, has he kind of lost his edge here, Mike, a little bit? Or
I don't know. It's we'll find out next week, right? Well, it's there's a lot at stake there. Didn't have a great world championship, so and then he gave up Florida, things like that, to play the World Games, which is big. I know that he was excited about playing the World Game. He was the defending champion, defending gold medalist.
Well, he
Um,
he stole that from Tyler because Tyler had his ass by the throat. By the throat.
yeah, he got a bump from the German Federation for winning the last gold. So, you know, I don't know. He's an interesting topic these days in terms of watching him, and it could be maybe he has a bad year, and then he screws it down a little bit tighter, and you know comes back to what he used to be. But I don't think that we have to worry that he's an easy out these days.
No, I don't think I'd go that far. Like, I obviously got more respect for the guy than that and his accomplishments, and I still think he's like you just say the name, and a lot of guys will go and get beads of sweat down their
Yeah,
face. You know what I mean? Especially if they see him on the bracket. Um, but I just think about guys who are like disappearing, like in spots where they're not supposed to, right? And one thing's okay, it's tournament, it's tough, it's young, it's so many traps, blah blah blah, right? And you can insert said cliche, but I just feel like when I start reflecting on, and I haven't looked at any tournament finishes or anything like that. It's just the old eye test. But I just think, man, he's losing to some guys that I ain't used to seeing him lose to, and he doesn't really have that same like it factor sitting in that chair where I think like he's invincible. Like when I think about Federer, I think he's a bad motherfucker, Mike. I ain't trying to mess with him. But when I think about like Shane a few years ago, the same thing. And Shane, to me, he's kind of taken a step back, but that's just by his standard, you know, just by the expectation that we have from him over the course of his career. But it's like, look, I seen a post about Carlos' accomplishments, and I'm like, man, he's playing good over the last 5 years, And we mentioned Yap earlier, Fran earlier, Federer, of course. It's like you think about these eras that we've been in, and you can make an argument that it's been the Carlo era or the Federer era, right? But then it's been the filler era, right? At least that's what we talked about him, right?
I mean, he has won this year, as somebody
Yeah.
pointed out. I mean, he did win the European Open, so it's not a little too early to write obituaries about him. But
No, and I'm not going that far off the deep end, Mike. Not
but
yet anyway.
you expect to see him. I mean, we've gotten so used to seeing him in the final eight, final four, virtually every time there's a tournament because he's just there were those 3 or 4 past years, where he walked into a room and screwed his cue together, and whoever was playing was already losing 2-0. So it's fun to watch that part of the game as well.
Look, it is, and that's where like the ebbs and flows of like the season come into play, And for me, he's sitting. I think last I checked, like number 2 in the Europeans behind Claudio, So like, but we're just so used to like you said, seeing him on the tail end of like every single major, right? And
Yeah, right.
yeah, just from like start to finish, you know what I mean? And so to kind of have him uh, be a bronze in that spot was interesting. Gerson, I can't take my head off enough to the guy because he just played a phenomenal match and showed a lot of heart and guts and all those things that you expect from athletes of sport. And so, but yeah, I'm gonna for sure be keeping an eye on Filler where I normally would. But even more so to kind of see like how's he going to finish, because we think of him in terms of being a closer, and now it's the business end of the season, Mike, right? Like this stretch is super valuable, and I don't think he's in a position, at least not like from off the table stuff, to be able to afford like being able to regress, because I don't think Matchroom's afraid to pull that plug and say, hey, you know what, we'll pick a wild card, or the captain will pick a wild card, go in a different direction. So my point is that like if he's not in that top 3, I don't think his ass is so safe like he was a couple of years ago. So how important?
I don't know if
Well,
there's too many players. If there are already 3 players on the team, I don't know if there's too many players in the world. If I'm European, that I'm picking over Josh.
I'm not either, Mike. But you know that it's not up to guys like you or me. You know, and uh, I think last year was really telling, and I don't feel like that relationship has been mended enough to where you can say he's that same automatic no questions asked lock, and it has nothing to do with how he can still play because look, even though he won the European and he's sitting number 2, I still think Josh is a bad guy. I still think that he's gonna be a serious threat in the U.S. Open, and from a storyline standpoint, I hope that he is. You
Yeah.
know, and I just love watching him play pool. I love watching him hit balls and play any kind of pool, whether it's bank pool, one pocket, 10 ball, what I don't care. I just love watching the kid play. But I do feel like, especially in time will tell, depending on how the next couple months go, it's like how weighted will the Florida Open be? How weighted if he disappears in a U.S. Open, and some of these other kids go and make a leap on him or threaten him a little bit. How is he going to go and finish off the season? Right? We don't expect him to be in Hanoi, right?
Let's
So
talk. I mean, how does he finish? You mean finish up the season as respect to like Mosconi Cup or Reyes Cup?
yeah.
Okay, well,
Yeah,
let's say he's a relative no-show at the U.S. Open. We're
okay.
pretty sure he's not playing Hanoi anyways. Either
Nope,
way, right?
he's not.
Pretty sure he's not playing the Philippine Open. Either way.
Nope.
All right. So U.S. Open is kind of his last chance to figure out where his number is going to be at the end of the year.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree with you. And it's going to be like it should be more of a storyline than what it is, but I don't think anybody wants to make it a storyline, and whether it's
Show.
Josh, say that again.
Get him on the show.
Well, the fucker won't respond to my messages, Mike. What am I supposed to do? He's still pissed off from the last a year ago's and the way that everything went down. So and I don't blame him. I can understand that. It's not the first pool player that I've pissed off, and it surely won't be the last. But it is going to be telling because look, if you're just looking at it from pick the metric, heart, fight, big stage, execution, right? Putting eyes on an event, you name it, that kid's got it. And if I'm going to battle, there's not too many players that I would pick before him, and I mean including the entire talent pool that is the WNT roster.
Yeah.
I'm including the Asians, I'm including the Americans, I'm including the Europeans, any and everybody. If there's like an open draft, there's not too many names going before Josh, at least for me anyway. Because if I got the first pick, he's the first kid that I'm picking. Better believe it, because he's made for those kind of events, Mike. But because of all the off the table stuff that's kind of gone on, and the fact that look, let's be real, Mike. Matchroom wants that Mosconi Cup to be more competitive, like we talked about earlier on the show. And what better way to make it more competitive than to get? I don't want to say get rid of Josh.
How did it work out last year? They froze him out. It didn't work out too well.
That's fair. That's fair and completely accurate. But at the same time, like that the Americans got a better shot with Josh sitting on the sidelines than they do with him playing because, Josh is that kind of player. And look how well that panned out, right? Yeah. Look how well that ended up working out. I just think, look, it's going to be interesting to see, especially as like the makeup comes together of after the U.S. Open, right, and heading into these last couple of events where they can pick up, like guys in good positions can kind of sew up their spots, and then other guys it's kind of have to win or go bust or go home, because that's the only chance they got. Right. But the U.S. Open money wise is really the last swing for a lot of these guys, and so if I'm the Americans, I'm loving seeing young Europeans, make waves. But then it's kind of a catch-22 because then these motherfuckers are going to be in like top gear, even though they got like no big stage experience. You know what I mean, Mike?
We'll wait and see how that turns out. What I like looking at is like Reyes Cup standings, right? Yeah. For Team Asia, right now you've got the guy with the black hat, Aloysius Yap, and 4 Filipinos.
Good luck.
It's the top 5.
Yeah. It's going to be, look,
interesting from all sorts of directions.
And you know what? Thinking about the way that the last like 3 weeks has shaped out, I kind of wish I would have had one more swing at a European versus Asian Reyes Cup because like the question marks of that Asian team dynamic is going to come into play, and the Europeans with a chip on their shoulder and whatever. You know, I think that it could have been, it could be different than. I mean, I think it would have been different than what last year would have been like. So, because I like seeing guys get humbled, but I also like seeing guys get inspired. You know, and a
Yeah.
lot of these players who are in that
Yeah.
top five of whatever are all have that makeup, Mike. You know,
Yeah.
every single one of them. But yeah, I think look, all eyes are going to be on Atlantic City come next week. And you can look at it from a number of different standpoints. The European top three, I feel like, is still wide open. You know,
Yeah.
the Asian team is pretty much top three is pretty much locked up. You know, I don't think anyone's gonna for sure no one's gonna go and jump Carlo. Yap's in a really great spot. Chua's in a really good spot. Um, so you know you're gonna get a good core there going back. I still think Huang's gonna be an automatic for that team, or at least somebody from Vietnam, you know, if they make a deep run, has a chance of taking his spot there. But it's gonna make the next like 2 months really exciting for the sport, Mike, and for these big events. I don't know when the selection process is going to happen or when the cutoff date is, or
Told you yet?
I gave up asking, Mike, if I'm being honest with you. I'm just exhausted with asking.
Well,
I'm
you know
exhausted
what?
with like having to ask obvious questions, Mike.
Your man's going to be in Atlantic City, and I'm gonna ask some questions, and I'll tell you, right now that I'm not going to get any answers, but I'll ask.
I think I can give you more or less what the answers are going to be, you know, in a nutshell. So, no, look, there's always a twist at this point of the year. There's going to be someone making a run. There's going to be storylines. There's going to be Cinderellas. There's going to be usual suspects. There's going to be a great mix and balance between that final 16, and that's why I love big events like the U.S. Open. And if you think about the last like 15 plus years of like what's the tournament you want to win, it's the U.S. Open. The U.S. Open has always had that big of a prestige to it, and you could ask any player over the last 15 years what event they wanted to win, and more often than not, they're going to start with that event because it was more important than, or at least more prestige and difficult to win relative to a world championship, even. You know, and so I can't wait to see Atlantic City. I don't know if I'm going to be there, Mike, but if I'm not, hopefully we can still do hopefully we can still do some stuff from remotely as well.
Yeah.
And if I'm there, then of course I'll be bugging you, and we'll be doing shows live from AC. But we don't know. I gotta go home and see my girls though. They started school, so family first. But you got anything else before we get out of here, buddy?
Oh, all good.
Okay, give me. And I want to do a when are you leaving the U.S. Open, by the way?
Not until Thursday morning.
Okay, so we got stuff to do, we got time to do like a pregame thing and kind of go over the first couple of days. Are you going to be free next week?
When do they kick off?
I think they kick off Monday, Mike. I'm not mistaken.
Monday, because it ends Saturday.
I think so. I don't know. Could be wrong. I'm pretty sure it's Monday though that it starts off. But we can. I want to do like a going over the bracket type show. I don't know if we'll have time, but I want to be doing some more stuff throughout the event. So hopefully you'll be around and available. And if you're not, well, I'm still gonna be bugging you anyway and seeing if you got any windows of opportunity. So
yeah, it looks like they do kick off Monday. So
good deal. All right. Well, thanks everybody for hanging out with us. Appreciate all the sponsors who help put the show on and keep us going. We'll see you guys real soon. We'll have more talk on the U.S. Open, the Battle of the Bull, and all kinds of things coming up in the next few days. Mike, enjoy your weekend, buddy. And sorry I was late the last few days and left you hanging, buddy. So.